Release all loose items in the pouch in front of you.
Have a safe and informative journey.
Hello, I'm Nathan Hartman, and this is Dreamfinders, a podcast about the creative culture of Disney theme parks. For almost 30 years, Kevin Brassard beat up Nazis, stole ancient artifacts, and ran from explosions. Quite the day job. As the very first Indiana Jones at Hollywood Studios' Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, Kevin was trained by film stunt legends and now teaches the next generation of actors who take up the fedora and whip. Kevin chats with me about his love of Indy and how it started well before he played the role, what his favorite moment is in the show, and how the Stunt Spectacular has a surprising connection with, believe it or not, Space Mountain. All of that and more is coming right up on Dreamfinders. Kevin Brassard, welcome to Dreamfinders. Thank you so much for coming on.
Are you kidding? Thank you for having me.
Now, of course, we're going to talk about Indy. But actually, I want to start on the other side of the country, because you grew up in California, correct?
I did. I grew up in San Diego, California. I was the last of 7 kids, in a good Irish Catholic family. And I was the only one in my family that had any inclination to be in this industry or the entertainment industry or anything like that.
Were you a creative child? Like, I mean, you mentioned, of course, that you're the one with the interest in the industry, but like, was there music around the house?
Was I a creative child? I was a nut. I was the class clown. I was the one that couldn't sit still. Back then, they didn't just automatically attribute it to ADD or ADHD or anything like that, of which I'm not, but I probably was.
Precocious, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, to say the least. Absolutely.
Did you have I would assume because of that, you already had that sort of sense of adventure. Were you the risk-taking kind, the climbing up too high in the tree and the... Oh,
I absolutely was. I was totally the kid whose mom was always telling him, get down off of that. Don't climb up there. You're going to hurt yourself. Get down. Yeah, that was totally me.
So you channel some of this into acting. When did you get into acting?
I did. So in my high school, we did the normal high school plays and everything like that. Then after I did the community theater route. And then I went to a community college in San Diego, Grossmont College, and I took sign language. And I took it for 2.5, almost 3 years, where I was pretty much fluent in it. And I found out how much I loved it and how much it actually helped me in my acting. And helping other people was also a very good thing too. So just being in that sign language world helped me tremendously getting into more of the acting.
How does that sort of connect? How does learning sign language?
I was so able to express myself so much more with sign language than without it.
Did you, were there roles at Grossmont or specific things that you sort of went, hey, I think this is my style?
No, actually, there were no roles at Grossmont. Just later in life, I learned, once I moved to Florida, actually, what was the name of the community theater here? I cannot remember. But we did Children of a Lesser God. I auditioned for the role. I was already very fluent in sign language, and I got the part of James Lead, which is one of the leading roles in it. And it was amazing. And getting to work with a deaf actress as well was even more amazing.
And did that just sort of start your, is that where the bug sort of hit when it comes to like performing and things of that nature? Like, were you expecting that you'd be so interested in this field to the point where you would leave doing sign language as a full-time sort of thing?
No, actually the bug hit a lot earlier. back in San Diego when, well, let's even back up more because I would say that it hit with my mom, who played the organ, played the piano, and I grew up on the side of an organ and the side of a piano, singing for Grandma, and she just kept me singing. So I would say that the bug started then.
Is that what brought you to Florida, or was it was it sign language based? Because it seems like you had the interest, but you also had sign language. Feels like, and I've always heard this about, you know, the creatives, like we have to have some sort of other thing that we're passionate about that kind of can make us money. So we try to do this other thing. Was that sort of the balance, doing both at the same time?
It was a backup plan. It definitely was, but it never really panned out. I never got myself certified or became that great at it that I could interpret.
But it brought you to Florida?
Well, actually, Disney brought me to Florida.
Oh,
I auditioned for Walt Disney World in Los Angeles, and got the role of Johnny Ringo for the Hoop-de-Doo Review. That was my first gig here in Florida. It was awesome. It's also where I met my wife, who was my dance partner. I was introduced to Jennifer at the time. I was Johnny, she was Claire, and there were choreographed kisses in the show. Well, we kind of hooked up, and there were a lot more choreographed kisses in the show than there were before. But yeah.
Tell me about Hoop-de-Doo at that time. Was it? I mean, it's still a blast, but I mean,
oh my gosh, yes.
That was, what is the Disney World of the? I'm assuming at that point, like the mid '80s.
Yeah, late '80s. My hire date was '87, so the late '80s, and the Hoop-de-Doo at that time was an absolute blast. It still is to this day, like you said, but back then. Just being single and new in Florida and being introduced to all of these people who quickly became family. Mm. And that's true pretty much with every show, but especially at the Hoop-de-Doo, we all became just very close. And to this day, we are still very close. And it was a blast. It was so much fun because, you didn't have to go to work until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So you could do your shows and you can go out afterwards if you felt like it. And pretty much we did. And then slept in. There were no kids.
Yeah, there was nothing. No responsibility.
Nothing like that. Exactly. It was awesome.
What was the hangout when it comes to, when you mentioned being done with the show and hanging out? Was there, is there a cast member bar or place that people love to go after these shows?
Oh my God, there so was, and I can't remember it. I really can't. It was this dive of a place, and it was out past Kissimmee. Everybody, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of this place. It's not there anymore. They tore it down, but
that's Orlando for you.
I know. When you left Disney, you'd put your ID up there. If you hurt yourself or you were on crutches, you could bring your crutches there afterwards, and hang them up on the wall. Oh, I can't believe I can't remember the name of the place, but it was awesome.
So how long were you in Hoop-de-Doo before? How many shows do you think you did before you auditioned for Indy?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was there for 2 years, 3 shows a night. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Do you still remember the songs? Are they still in your head back there in the back?
Oh, they are still in my head. Yeah. And I will do your audience a favor and not sing. Although I do love to sing, but, yeah, I still remember the songs. You can't get them out of your head.
No, it's theater.
Yeah.
89, of course, you're 29 years old. And Disney has this new part for Jack available.
Yes.
And you're excited about Jack. Tell me about Jack.
So I got a phone call asking if I would like to audition for a character named Jack. And it was just an action character, and that's all that they told me about it. I went and I auditioned, I read the script, I kind of forgot about it, and 3 months later I got a phone call saying, how would you like to be Indiana Jones? And I went, what? I didn't audition for that. And they said, actually, yes, you did, you just didn't know it. Mm-hmm. It was a huge, huge secret at the time, and they wanted to keep everything hush-hush, so that was how they did it. I said absolutely yes, I would love to. And once they went into more detail about what was going to be expected of me and what I could expect, I was absolutely thrilled. And let me just also say this for your audience too. I have had the most wonderful, the most blessed career. I think I personally feel I am one of the luckiest cast members ever to be hired by Walt Disney World. I have had the best career at Walt Disney World, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them. Because, like, going back to what they were telling me about what I could expect about Indiana Jones, when they told me that Glenn Randall, Bob Yerkes, Larry Holt, that they were the people who were going to be training me to use a whip, to throw a punch, to perform a high fall, all of these things, I'm like, wow, I don't know who those people are, but I'm going to find out. So I did. I kind of did a little research on my own and found out that Glenn Randall was the man. Glenn Randall was the stunt coordinator for all of the movies. He taught Harrison how to use a whip.
He's Boba Fett. For people who don't know, any action scenes with Boba Fett, that's Glenn Randall.
He was the number one stunt Boba at the time. And I mean, that was huge. When I found that out, I was thrilled beyond belief. And then on top of all of this, they're paying me. I don't have to pay them. They're paying me to enjoy all of this and learn all of this. It was beyond belief. It truly was like God just said, here, bam, this is the job for you for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm.
Did you, I mean, at the time, you did not consider yourself a stuntman. You did not consider, you were just another actor.
I was a singer, dancer, actor.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I guess that sort of surprises me in the sense that, like, when I think about, okay, they're going to hire for a stunt show, they would, I guess in my head, I would think, okay, they're going to go to Hollywood and they're going to hire a Glenn Randall, right? Like they're going to hire someone like that. But they take these, were you all newbies when it came to stunts when you first started, everyone in the cast?
Not all of us. There was a gentleman named Tom Akes who was at that time, he was filming Superboy, I believe, and he was the stunt double for the main character there in that series. There were other people as well that were involved in stunts, but I was specifically hired because Glenn Randall, who held the auditions himself, saw something in me. And at that time, I was just a dancer who could move, but I moved, I don't know how to say this, except just to say it. I could move like a man would move. Mm-hmm. I moved very strongly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
To the back of the house. They could see the movements clean. Yeah, that makes sense.
Correct. And they needed someone who could choreograph that first scene with the punjies because it had to appear as though you were stumbling your way through, yet in control. Mm. So that's where I came into play. And to this day, the choreography is still mine. Hmm.
Did you, what did you learn? I mean, you learned a lot from these stunt guys, but what is something that you were not expecting that they taught you less about stunts, but more about acting?
That's a great question. One of the things I can tell you that I learned and that I was surprised by is with every show that I've ever done, we always became very close. But you did eventually lose contact with those people as the show, ended. with this particular show and the fact that it's still going on, I was surprised by the fact of how close we all came. And we actually had to get even a step further in our closeness with each other because our lives were literally at stake with one another, and we had to depend on each other to keep us safe. So we were all learning this together, and that was a wonderful thing. But that closeness was. I've always said that I am so proud to be part of the most wonderful dysfunctional family at Walt Disney World, because that's exactly what we are. We are. There's a bond there with everyone that is just unbelievably strong.
Let me ask you a little bit about Raiders, because Raiders came out in your early 20s. Do you remember seeing it in theaters?
I totally do. Yeah, I remember going with my mom and my dad. My brothers and sisters at that time didn't want to see it. So my mom and dad took me, and I sat there just awestruck. When that boulder came out, I will just never, ever forget. It's a moment you never forget. You know, like, you know exactly where you were when 9/11 hit. You know exactly where you were. I knew exactly where I was when that boulder came out. Didn't know later in life that it was going to be so prevalent in my life.
You were going to know exactly when that boulder came out from the rest of your life, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's funny is with all this time that we've had on our hands lately, I have been able to go through paperwork and pictures and stuff like that. And I found some old modeling photos of myself that I did when I was probably 17 years old. And I am standing there in an Indiana Jones hat and a leather jacket and the brown pants and the whole thing. And I totally forgot that I ever took that picture. I just thought wow, that is pretty darn cool. Who knew?
So let's talk a little bit about that initial practicing for the role, because clearly you've mentioned in interviews it just sort of looked like some, people were painting the side of a building, like you guys were sort of, as a rough setup, sort of learning things. But I'm curious about the impact on your body, even as a dancer and as someone who is staying somewhat fit for roles and things like that. What muscles did you not know you had until you started practicing for this show?
All of them. Yeah, I would tell you that I was sore from my toes to the top of my head. I truly was. Learning how to use a whip, the shoulder muscles were completely drained of all energies. And because although Glenn was great, he only let us do it for, a couple hours at a time. He goes, no, you're going to need to take a break. And at that time, we're like, no, we're fine. We'd go ahead and do more. And he would go, okay, but you're going to come to me tomorrow and go, I don't want to do this. And he was so right. Yeah, every muscle in my body hurt.
I want to talk a little bit about the sort of, I guess, the creation aspect of the show, because you're in by the time do they have most of it figured out by the time you're starting to practice, or are you guys still tweaking and figure things out? Because I know George Lucas was initially involved in some aspects of the creation of the show as well, and that sort of stuff. What was your experience sort of turning the show into what we see it today? How long did that process take?
Oh, it actually took a long time, because we had a 9-month training period at the warehouses where there were makeshift buildings, and there was scaffolding that was put up. And we worked the stunts, we worked the script, we tried to fine-tune everything there before we came over to the studios, because it was being built at the time. The actual first commercial for the show, I was fortunate enough to be involved in as well. They had the boulder in the parking lot of what was then the MGM Studios, and we filmed that first commercial then there. But so some of the work was done over at the warehouses. When we were finally ready to move over to the studios, our script and our show was still not ready. The park was not actually ready either. So yet some things were ready and they wanted to open. So they did, but our show was not quite ready. Right. So we were in a fishbowl. We had signs out front of the theater saying that here's what's coming. You're welcome to come in and watch. Just know that this is not a final show as of yet. So people knew that coming in, and we would run things, see how it worked. If it was good, sometimes we kept it. Sometimes we didn't. If it didn't work, and that was kind of odd, having to be in that atmosphere, of having people come in, and you could see their reactions. Some were good and some were not. Some were happy, some were not. So that was completely different.
Yeah, I don't feel like Disney today would be like, come on in and watch the show in progress. Like it's a different time totally.
It really is. And our script went through so many changes. Like there was a pre-show with two characters called Bubbles and Bernie who would go out and introduce themselves to the audience, and they were pretty much entertainment until the pre-show started. That quickly went away. It did happen for a little while, but not long. Yeah, there's been so many changes. With every director that's come in, they've always tried to leave their mark on it. And the show has changed, but for the most part, it has gone back to what Glenn Randall pretty much set up in the beginning, to what he finalized as our show. Well,
let me ask you about, I mentioned, of course, a minute ago, a little bit about George Lucas's involvement. Did you get a chance to meet him and sort of engage with George?
I wouldn't say there was a whole lot of engagement there. He's a very private person.
Yeah.
But he did actually come back into the green room trailer, and he was gracious enough to take a picture with the cast. Wonderful man, very nice to everyone that he met that day, along with Michael Eisner, who was there when that opening day of the show. That was quite a milestone day for me. It really was, because I was the lucky enough Indy who got to open the show.
Let's talk about that opening day, because you're right. You have you have George Lucas, you have Michael Eisner, and you're the one you are the one waiting to fall and start the thing for the very first time.
Oh my gosh. And I have goosebumps. I really do. I have goosebumps right now with you even just saying it like that. And that's exactly the way I felt that day. I was a nervous wreck. Just knowing that the weight it wasn't just on me, but I'm the lead character. And I'm the one that they're watching. And I'm the only one that they're watching right now, because the first scene is just me. Yeah, so I was a wreck. And just knowing that George Lucas, by that time, Glenn Randall was more like a second dad to me. So I just wanted to... sorry.
No, that's fine.
I love that man. I love him so much. He is, to this day, he will always be just like a dad to me. And so I wanted to make him proud, but man, with George Lucas there, I just wanted to get through it and make him happy.
You've mentioned that your favorite part of that show is that very first moment. It's like the best introduction.
Oh my gosh. It totally is. Oh my gosh. I mean, you as an actor, to have that entrance into a scene, there's nothing like it in the world. And I was at that time, one of 3 people in the world who got to do it. It was amazing. It was totally amazing. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best ride in the park.
So take us behind the scenes a little bit, because I've always been curious. How does that first part work? Are you standing on a trap door? Are you standing? Are you crouched? Like,
I am standing.
You're standing. So run us through that. I want to know about the 30 seconds before the ground comes out behind you. What is happening before that moment?
So there are a series of safety checks that have to be done. Disney always made sure that everything was exactly where it was supposed to be, and we felt safe doing what we were doing. And Glenn Randall was actually a big part in that too. Safety was just his utmost concern. So what we are attached to is a Space Mountain braking system.
Huh.
So the same thing that is over at Space Mountain that stops those cars is exactly what we are attached to. There's a rope that is secured to the braking system. There's a shuttle that runs through the braking system, and nothing drops out from underneath us. We are attached to a quick release system and a safety loop, and we jump out. You literally jump off the ledge, and the shuttle follows you as you descend, and it goes through the braking system. Those brakes slowly compress more and more until you stop about 10 to 12 feet off the ground.
Wow.
And it's awesome.
You don't, and I'll tell you what, I would assume that there's a trap door, because you guys really do make it look like you're falling opposed to jumping. It does have that, it has the falling feeling, not the jumping feeling. So it's impressive. So where does the like, I don't even think it's gravel, I don't know, but there's stuff the debris that comes down as well. Is that just sort of chucked by somebody after you get through, or is that also an automated process?
That is a separate, there's a trap door up there where the technician pushes a lever and the rocks go just pretty much at the same time that Indy goes. So we kind of fall together.
In the best introduction ever.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I think. We were talking about George Lucas earlier, but there's been multiple celebrities that have used your stage to showcase their show. So we're talking Full House, but more importantly, we're talking Kermit and Miss Piggy, who do almost like a large portion of the stunt show in character for the Muppet at Walt Disney World TV show. And I just was curious if, because you are there and you are trained on the show and that sort of stuff, if you had any involvement with either the Full House or the Muppets at Disney World special, if they had you involved at all doing things.
So yes, I am the Indy who actually appeared in the House Meets the Mouse episode where they visit the Indiana Jones stage. I am, I don't remember the actor's name. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
I am his stunt double. Mm-hmm. And, I'm the one that pops up at the end of it with my, what do they call it? Not ponytail, but, back then in the 80s, what's it called? Mullet. Yeah. So I shake my mullet and take off my hat, and that's me. But the Muppet one, I did not have any involvement with. That was another Indy, a great friend of mine, Larry Lee, who was lucky enough to be able to perform with the Muppets. And that was quite an experience for him, but I did not have any involvement in that. I can't speak on that.
But how was the Full House experience? I mean, those episodes are some of the most beloved, I think, because it really showcases a moment in theme park history. What was it like for you?
It was fantastic. Getting to meet the cast was great as well. They were all so kind, so gracious, and they just wanted it to be great, So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, one of my first experiences filming something of that magnitude. Yeah, it was great.
Do you remember any other? Do you remember any acting heroes that have just come by as normal guests that you got to perform for. I've had the opportunity to talk to Jungle Cruise skippers who've said they've suddenly found themselves, doing jokes for Robin Williams and that sort of stuff. Did you ever have any of those moments where action stars or people that you admire showed up and you're like, oh my gosh?
Well, I will tell you that I was extremely jealous that I was not working the day that Harrison Ford came by. I would have loved to have met him, but I did not. Jeff Robinson was the Indy that day, and Jeff. Actually, it was very fitting that Jeff got to meet him because Jeff was a wonderful Indy who really took the role of Indy to a level of his own, and he emulated Harrison's run like just so perfectly. It was great that he got to meet him. So he came by. Michael Jackson came by. That was fantastic. Macaulay Culkin came by. There have been Princess Di came by.
There's a picture. You can find that picture online. She's very pleased. I was wondering if you were part of that show.
I was not. I would have loved to have been, but I was not.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this is, I feel like, kind of the general question that you probably get all the time, but we'll go through it because I'm sure people are curious, which is basically you've dislocated an ankle, you've had a few scrapes and stuff like that. But of course that's rather unscathed for what you're doing. But for yourself, has there been any, of course there's been tragedy and we don't have to go into any of that, of course, but, has there been close calls for yourself where you're like, oh man, I'm glad I was 2 feet this way? Any moments like that?
I haven't had really moments like that. I've been very fortunate. I think one of the things that was instilled at the very, very beginning is that you've got to check your own stunts. You've got to make sure that everything is safe. And I don't think I've ever veered away from that. I will tell you that time and the amount of shows that I did caught up with me in 2017 when my gait of my walk, all of a sudden, it just wasn't right. It didn't feel right to me. And it got progressively worse. And then Disney took great care of me. They made sure that I had the best doctors. And all of a sudden, I was, within 2 weeks, my walk went from normal to I had to support myself to go from one place to another. To just walk around my house, I was going from table to table, chair to chair. And I could not lift my legs. So they sent me to an incredible doctor, and he said, you need surgery. So I had surgery the next day. He said if I didn't have it, I'd end up in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. So I would say that was the closest call that I've had. And 45 minutes after the surgery, I was better than ever. I was walking down the hallway.
Well, you mentioned, I should say, in another interview, you talk about how, you'll do the show 4 times a day and then sometimes 8 if you have to do a double. That was
back in the early days.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. When you're in something, and I've done some theater, and when you're in theater, you can sometimes, I would say, go into autopilot after like the 10th performance. Not that you're trying to, but you know the moves, you know where you need to go. Your brain is, can get a little hazy if you're not careful. But generally speaking, when that happens, you can't get maimed. How do you keep yourself sharp even when it's the last show after, a bunch? Like, how do you keep a focus as an actor in those situations?
Well, I'll tell you how I have always kept it. There was a moment I had where this dad and his son came up to me, and the dad, oh gosh, I'm going to try to not cry here. Sorry.
That's
but
all right.
The dad was just so gracious and so kind with his words and how he expressed to me what he just saw and how much he enjoyed it. But more than anything, it was in his words, he expressed to me that he was his son's hero at that moment was me. And that the dad, every dad wants their kid to look up to them. Every dad wants to be their own son's hero. And at that moment, it just seemed like the dad was giving up that for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have kept that with me. With every performance, I just keep that in mind. It keeps me fresh. I also don't ever want the audience to go, yeah, he's kind of walking through it. I would just never do that. I just could never do that. So, but that was the moment for me that I keep in my head, I keep in my forethoughts, I keep in my heart.
Now, of course, you transitioned to primarily playing the director part.
Yeah, I'm old.
But, this gives you an opportunity to engage with the audience in a way you don't necessarily get to when you're busy sort of doing the stunts, right, and thinking through that process. Do you enjoy being more engaged with the audience and having sort of the other side of the coin, as it were?
Oh, I absolutely do. And I am also very grateful to have this experience, or to be able to still be involved in the show, and to not have Disney go, well, you know what, you're done. Disney has taken great care of me, and I think they also see the worth in what I bring to the show. I'm still the trainer, still the Indy trainer, so I get to train the Indies that come in ready to learn the show, and I'm grateful for that too.
How long does it take to train an Indy? What's the prep time like? And then what's the integration phase? Because I'm assuming you can't just be like, all right, go on out.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You can't just go out and do that, and that's not how we do it. So it's a 9-week process. There are 3 scenes. We pretty much try to give each scene 3 weeks, with 2 weeks of intense training for each scene. And then that 3rd week is where we go ahead and we mix them into the actual show, the daily ops show. So we'll have our full-time Indy will give up their scene 1, and the new Indy will do scene 1, and then the full-time Indy does scenes 2 and 3. Because the role is a stunt double, we can get away with that. It's very much in the movie business that you would have more than one stunt double, in a film or a series. So, and the training process varies from Indy to Indy because of experience levels. Sometimes you'll get an Indy who I don't want to say thinks they know what they're doing.
Sure.
And they actually have bad habits that you have to kind of break down and start all over. Give me an Indy that has no experience, and I'm set, because that's a blank slate for me, and I get to color in all the lines and teach this person how to do it. And there is nothing like it in the world when you see that light in their eyes click when they get the whip or they get a certain stunt. It's very fulfilling. I love it. And I also am getting to pass on Glenn Randall's knowledge, because I trained them exactly like Glenn Randall trained me.
Now and then, at least from what I've been told, you do still fill in as Indy, and I've seen you online in a promo for the show as Indy.
Yeah.
Is Indy right? Is it the mileage or the years that takes the toll when doing it now?
It's the years. Right now it's the years. Well, as of the 30th anniversary of our show, that was my last performance as Indiana Jones. Disney has decided that it's probably best if I don't perform the role anymore. I still could, just between you and me and whoever's listening to this podcast. I still could. I could run circles around some of them, not all of them, but some of them. And
well, we'll just get you a Crystal Skull stunt show, and then they need a salt and pepper Indy for that. So
that's funny.
But hey, you're not just Indy. To some, you've been Gaston in an Orlando production of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
Let me ask you.
Actually, I did that at Disney as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What other shows did you do at Disney before Indy? Or around the same? I mean, I'm assuming you can do multiple things.
Well, and see, that's what I meant when I said earlier I have had the most wonderful career at Disney, because the people who were in control, the casting, and like the Mike Corcuses and the Ronnie Rodriguez's, they saw my worth, and I was very, very happy that they did. I wasn't just a stuntman. I wasn't just a singer, dancer, actor. I could do it all, and I wanted to do it all. So I was fortunate enough to do. I was Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. I did the Hoop-Dee-Doo Review. I did the Diamond Horseshoe in the Magic Kingdom. I did Tarzan over in. I was the lead singer at Tarzan. Tarzan Rocks over in the Animal Kingdom.
Yeah.
I did Ace Ventura, the stunt show.
No
on New York
way.
Street. Oh, absolutely.
How long did that last? I mean, I don't feel like it was very long, but
it wasn't. It was kind of as time goes by, it was like the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
But I think it went on after I stopped doing it for another year, at least, probably maybe 2 years.
Early Hollywood Studios days. It's just
Teenage
Mutant Ninja Turtles running around and just non-Disney properties everywhere.
Oh my gosh, yes. I can't believe that they actually let me drive a cab down New York Street, about 30 miles an hour and there were people lined up on either side of the street, no stanchions. They weren't thinking, no one's going to run into the street, and no one did.
Yeah.
No one did. No one ever did. And I got to crash into trash cans at the end of the street. It was incredible. When they hired me for Ace, I couldn't stand Ace Ventura. I really couldn't stand the character. And to sit there and have to watch hours and hours of him and just to try to get that character so perfect, because I was a perfectionist about Ace Ventura. I really wanted him to be spot on, that when somebody came, they couldn't tell if it was me or Jim Carrey. And I got him down to that point. But that was one of the hardest things I had to do, was just sit there and watch him for hours and hours and hours.
What's more exhausting, playing Indiana Jones or playing Jim Carrey? They seem equal.
Actually, I know, but it actually was Jim Carrey, because that level of character, you had to maintain that level for 45 minutes straight. That was the length of the show. But you also had a 15-minute autograph session after that, where we went down and, we were on the street with autographs for 15 minutes. You had a short little break after the show, just enough to wipe down the sweat and then go out and meet these people. So it was up close and personal, and that's why I wanted his character to be so perfect. That was an amazing show. And there have been more, the conventions that I've gotten to do at Disney. Yeah. I've had a one. Oh, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Let's not forget that.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I did that too.
Oh man, that's fun. Did you give any cruises away?
I did. Yes, I did. That is one of my fondest memories, was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because I got to, just learning the show was great. But as the show progressed, there I am. I'm sitting in a really nice suit that Disney provided, in an air-conditioned soundstage. And I just got to improv, for a half an hour. I mean, there were certain things that we had to hit, but yeah, for the most part, it was just me and whoever was in that hot seat. It was great.
Well, let me ask you, because of course you came back and, as I was saying earlier, played Gaston for an Orlando production. Do you enjoy playing the bad guy for a change? Do you get some thrill out of playing villains?
I did indeed. Yeah, I loved that. That was quite the great experience.
Recently, as you sort of mentioned, the 30th anniversary of Hollywood Studios. And you were part of that celebration. You drove one of the Indy trucks in the parade. I was there. It was a wonderful little show.
I did.
Looking back, like, it's been 30 years. What does Hollywood Studios mean to you as someone who's called that place, pretty much home for 30 years?
It is. It's my home away from home. I'm honored to be sorry.
That's okay.
I am honored to be a member of this company, a cast member who's had just an amazing career, and it means the world to me. It really does.
Well, Kevin Brassard, thanks so much for coming on Dreamfinders. And I would say, as a director, if you would do me the honor of please calling cut for this interview, I'd appreciate it.
And cut. That's a wrap.
And that's it for this episode of Dreamfinders. Thanks so much to Kevin Brassard for sharing his stories. Dreamfinders is edited by Shannen Michaelsen and quality control by Ben Harris. It's hosted and produced by yours truly, Nathan Hartman, who you can follow on Twitter at Some Stuff I Said. Our podcast artwork is provided by J.P. Tanner. Find his other work at tanwoodcreative.com. This podcast is distributed by WDW News Today, the worldwide leader in Disney Parks news. Read all they have to offer at WDWNT.com. Tell your friends about the show, and please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And if you or someone else you know would make a great guest on this program, feel free to email us at dreamfinders@WDWNT.com. I'm Nathan Hartman, and remember, if we can dream it, then we can do it.